All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a wonderful day. I got a very special watch list for you. I am about to give you the ultimate Fed breakdown simply because tomorrow can be the beginning of a crash or it will be the beginning of an ultimate rally. So I have a very nice play-by-play. We are going to go over exactly what happened at the last time Powell spoke. I'm telling you, this is going to be crazy. I have minute by minute exactly what occurred. You are going to want to stick around for this one, but actually, before we get into that, I want to share one little fun fact with you. What we have gone through this year so far, the NASDAQ is up 10% on January. This is one of the best years in decades. Right now, it's even the best month since last July, and really, it's the best start to the year in a couple of years. So everyone's feeling optimistic, but what you saw happen this year, it is called the January trifecta, aka the Santa rally was in full effect. The first 5 days of the market in January were green, and you ended the month of January. Why this is so important? Because in the last 99 years, according to the Stock Traders Almanac, this has only happened 38 times. So what has happened there, on average, any of those 38 times, or the median, the market ended up 13%. The old adage goes, if that's how the market starts, that's how we're going to end it, and it is looking positive. That's what has the bulls very excited, but hopefully you see here, we're here to give you information. We want you on both sides. Ultimately, I want you saving 10% and being prepared for anything, but let me show you another year that I know very, very well, 2018. And this one, believe it or not, actually, you had the January trifecta. You had a positive Santa rally into the final quarter. The first 5 days of the year was green. All of January ended extremely positive. And then the first couple days of February, you gave up all of that last couple months. This was the beginning of the taper tantrum. Eventually, you recovered it, and then you had a mess. This is where everybody first started to really know about Powell and get mad at him. So hopefully that helps you out. Hopefully you're ready, and hopefully you respect both sides. That is definitely something we've been saying. So, Chad, we have a big day tomorrow, and if you are not aware, we do it all live. Every single Powell, I have streamed it minute by minute. I trade with real money. We've actually performed very, very well. Some days we make a couple of grand. Sometimes we'll make $30,000. It is a very high-profile activity. I'm telling you, it's crazy. And if you are ever confused or want to watch the press conference live with us, we are going to have all that information. So, Chad, I think you're going to want to like the video. I mean, it always helps out, and we really appreciate it. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel, too, because we post these updates every single night. But, hey, maybe you could wait a little bit. Let me earn my worth right here and show you. But, Chad, it is going to be crazy. And now let us get into the gameplay. I hope you guys are ready for this one. So run it, baby.
Walking to the couch, it's the 2020 last shit. Live in the hills, but I still get a spread. Started with a live, but I still reinvest it. Feel how I feel, then it feel like a blessing. I just want the lesson, I just want protection. I'm up and I'm down, but the sound like progression. Farmer never plans if he waits for perfection. Finger to the down.
So right off the bat, before we get into the minute-by-minute gameplay of what happened, I want you to understand a couple things that you will not see at the meeting tomorrow. If you notice, right when the release came out, this was a massive drop. The press conference didn't start till right around here, and the SPY already went from like, what, 405.50 all the way down to like 399. Now, why this is not going to happen tomorrow, this isn't typical, and it's simply because on the December meeting, there was the summary of economic projections. That was a big deal, and what did people instantly respond to? I made a play on it. It had to do with the terminal rate rising. So the good and bad about tomorrow, you're not going to get SEP, and then when we go through the questions here, you'll see it came up a lot, but that's not what you had. So the first thing I'm telling you, we dropped immediately at the release. And one thing leading into the press conference, you were already trading at lows. You had the big drop, and then you started to chill out. And now this is going to lead into my next point here. I'm going to skip ahead, but people were expecting the acknowledgement of a lower CPI. Remember, you had a couple months of good CPI. People were feeling bullish. That's what allowed us to rally a really, really long way into the market. But after we got this report, nothing really changed. It was a big rate hike. The S&P was a lot more hawkish. Well, then you kind of started trading here in these 15-minute intervals. I'm telling you, all the way throughout, it is very apparent. I say this a lot. Watch every 15 minutes, especially if something kind of happens as expected and you start trading in a tight range. That's one thing I noticed after going over, and that's how I got all this for you. I re-listened to the last press conference, and honestly, this one was an S show. It really was very, very choppy, and you didn't really get moves until the end. And believe it or not, this is where the press conference ended, and then boom, you dropped, and then you close the day right here. So keep that in mind. The second thing I want you to understand here, I'm going to give you a minute-by-minute breakdown, but there was a delay when Powell walked out. Yes, I time it, and pretty much there was a nice little delay between 3:30 or 2:30 Eastern and him opening his mouth and speaking, so there will be a little bit of variance when we look at here. I kind of adjust for it and put it down here when we get to it, but I want you to keep that one in mind. And then, like I said, the S&P was also the main factor of this meeting, so there was a lot of discussion about it. So let's jump into it here. Oh, you can't see the time frame. I'm going to need to make this a little smaller here, so please hold. So I want you to be aware of the times here at the bottom, but right here is where it started, and then 3 minutes in, it started to drop off of Powell's prepared remarks. But now here's the thing. This is where he started talking about jobs, but also the prepared remarks should not move the market that much. Why? Because the prepared remarks, they come out right here. That is the initial statement. There will be stuff there. If anything does change in the prepared remarks, that will be important, but this one was a very surprising feature of last time because 3-4 minutes, you started to drop. He started talking about the jobs market being strong, and that's pretty much the only thing that has been making the Fed hawkish as of late. Then 4 minutes in, he said the CPI drop was welcome, but it's also going to take substantial more work. That's where you had these two big red candles, and then now 7 minutes in, he started to mention cumulative tightening effects, and believe it or not, the market actually liked it after dropping. It started, and this is what I mean, it just started to create all of these weird things, so keep that in mind. Then you had this mini pop 8 minutes in, and then this is something you should be on the lookout for tomorrow. I want to see if he changes anything related to this, but he said that the summary of economic projections, it is not a plan and just an estimate. That's kind of that Powell flexibility, and really it started a mini rally in the market. Really liked it, but now 9 minutes in right here, this is where the prepared statements ended. So from 30 to 39, 9 minutes of talking, that is where you had this reaction, and then now the prepared statements have ended. So now the first question, I thought this one was very interesting, and it was right around 39 or about 10 minutes in. Steve Leisman of CNBC, he asked about needing to do something about the financial conditions easing, and believe it or not, Powell, he didn't really say anything, and now you started to get a little bit of volatility. He was saying, hey, we could raise the peak rates at the next S&P, and this is where the market started to get a little volatile because you got to think about it. This candle, that means it shot up, but it ended here, and then right away into the, fully talking about this, you started to go down. Now, just imagine during the day, that looks pretty precarious there, but this is something I want you to keep in mind for tomorrow, because if he reverses this and starts to talk about, the terminal rate going lower and changing that plan, that will be in fact bullish. So now 13 minutes in, you got a big pop. It was Gina Smilek, I believe, New York Times, and then she started to ask about the speed of the rate hike. So you had a pop here, and what I want you to know, it was a big pop, but 5 minutes later, so coming around here, it pretty much led to a reload, and then it started to go up from here. But I'm going to walk you through this here of what really happened. Gianna asked him a question, and she was like, okay, so you're raising, you're doing it fast. What about the speed of everything? And what Powell said is, like, from here on out now, after we've got this welcome inflation data, he was saying that it is no longer about the speed. And Powell said it is important from here on out of how long we begin to keep our rates. That's the quote. He said, how long we will remain restrictive, that is the important question. And he actually alluded to that being answered at this meeting we are going to be dealing with tomorrow. So that was 13 minutes in. You started to shoot up. You even went a little higher. And then, like I'm saying, it started to come down here. And sure enough, this is something you're going to have to figure out for tomorrow. The drop started to occur on this 15 minutes. This is why this candle was really big. Powell begins to talk about the core housing data, and he brings up jobs and that he says it will take a substantial period to bring things down. So this was a pretty long answer. This was all an answer to Gianna Smilik's question, and what he was really talking about. He said there was 3 buckets, and he brought up the buckets of core goods and services, and he started talking about real estate. So this is what I brought up on some of the last data, and this, I believe, will be an X factor for tomorrow, because on any of the CPIs, they have still had this thing peaking or going up. It has not peaked and came down yet. So keep that one in mind. But now this little pop here, it was like 18 and a half minutes. So this candle, you come into here, you actually shoot up a little bit, then you close back into the lows, and then this pop now, this was around a Nick Timmerhouse, one of our favorites here. Wall Street Journal, around like 18:30 here, 18:30 minutes in from the whole press conference starting. There is this big candle leading into a big green, and that's what I want you to notice. And sure enough, this was a question about 25 basis points. Nick Timmerhouse said, are you going to start to probe for the terminal rate by going at a quarter at a time? And Powell actually said, you are broadly right. And then the market started to bounce as he started to say, quote unquote, there will be a slower pace moving forward. That got the markets excited. And then he moves on to talk about the CPI. Even though it came down, he said that didn't affect their projections at all. He said we kind of expected it and we could change. And now where you started to drop here was very, very small. We've seen her before. It was 20 to 21 minutes in, right around here. Rachel Siegel, she always asks about unemployment. I'm telling you, even though this is all very weird movements for a Fed meeting, if you haven't noticed so far, but Rachel Siegel, I think she's, I want to say Associated Press, but she brings up the unemployment questions a lot, and she has brought things down before. I think it was 2 meetings ago, Rachel Siegel's question that really, really shoved things down. So watch out for her just in case, but it didn't really move much. He answered it the same. You dropped a little bit, and then now, about 23 minutes in, following Rachel Siegel's question, you start to hit the low again, and then it was Colby Smith of the Financial Times. This is where things started to change, and I would keep an eye out for what she asked tomorrow. And what I want you to notice, I'm going to give you the other data points in between, but this question started a 20-minute rally. So she asked this. Powell ends Siegel's question around the 23-minute mark, and he's saying it's possible that they get a Goldilocks scenario where unemployment costs don't rise too much. This truly was the spark. I was looking at it, and again, there's like a lot of the questions, I even think towards the latter end, I don't think the market should have moved like it, but I'm telling you, this was a gigantic spark. It was the end of Rachel Siegel, beginning of Colby Smith, but he pretty much said something along the lines of, hey, you know, employment costs, this wage price spiral, I mean, hey, as long as they don't rise too much, Powell was saying something very bullish about that, or dovish, and that is what now began this rally. So Colby asked him if the terminal rates should be higher, and Powell said what he said earlier, and this is where, you know, the market started to like it as well too, but I would honestly say it was no real reaction. He kept saying this was their best estimate as of today. So we're going to jump a little bit ahead here, and then like 6 minutes in, you're going up, you have a pop that leads to a drop and another reload, but this was from Axios. I forgot to write the reporter's name. I call him an a-hole. It's I'll know him when I see him tomorrow, but he started to ask about rate cuts, and he said, hey, the Fed futures, they're showing that you guys are going to cut rates. What are you going to do about it? And Powell says that it's all about getting to restrictive territory, and it's not about rate cuts, and this is where Powell begins to start. He starts parroting it for the next 20 minutes, and he says, we will not consider rate cuts until the committee is fully confident that inflation data has came down. And now this might be a very important factor tomorrow because, you know, after 3 reports in a row now, maybe 4, how does Powell feel confident? How does the Fed feel about that? So that's what kind of started this little drop and pop here, and then we're going to come over to about 29. You got the little pop off of that, and it was Chris Rugabar of the Associated Press, and he started to talk about the wage price spiral questions, and Powell said there's a welcome reduction on price increases. Anytime he said it was welcome for the CPI, people really, really liked it. And he said, this is what we expected and provides greater confidence. And it kind of piggybacked off of this whole being confident thing. But the thing is, anytime Powell says it's a welcome reduction, the fact is, if it's getting better and you expect it to be better, that is why I believe the market started to take this up. So that was 29 minutes in, and that starts leading you a little higher here. And now this is where we really start to get the rally. It started with Michael McKee of Bloomberg. Again, it was coming off of those couple of questions, and then right before, it was like right around here, and it took him some time to ask the question, and then there was some follow-ups, but that's why I say it's like 30 to 31 minutes in, and then we really just started flying from there. But Michael McKee asked him, or he said that the market has been reacting to loosened financial conditions, and he said, is it possible that the Fed could just be behind the curve? Even Michael McKee said, hey, maybe it truly was transitory, and it borderline was a soft landing question. And now this was the second thing that was very good, and this is going to be very important for tomorrow. But Powell says, hey, we are close to restrictive. That was kind of an admission, and he says he doesn't know how long the process is going to take, but he says he does not disagree with soft landing being no longer achievable. Pretty much, he answered the question and said, hey, you know, we're getting closer to restrictive. We're getting closer to where we want to be. And he's saying, you know, we're not actually ruling out the soft landing. You know, pair that up with the Goldilocks question and things. This started to sound really, really bullish from here. And that makes sense why we started to have these rallies. So you keep going up, and I believe it's like 35 minutes in now. This is where you start to drop after Michael McKee. It's a small drop, and it didn't really last long. Powell starts to say, it was Yahoo Finance, I think Brian Chung, and he said that there's only painful ways to bring things down, but he did say that the market sees inflation coming down. Then things chilled out for a little bit. Then it was like 39.41, and I'll tell you now, the press conference is about to end. After Michael McKee, I think that's what did it all, because some of these other questions that were asked, Powell didn't answer in ways, and I just think you started to run off of it. But again, for tomorrow, what you got to keep in mind, you already had a gigantic reaction to the SEP right when this came out, so that's something that we're going to have to factor in. But 40 minutes in, where we continue the second leg up, it was Nancy Gensler of Marketplace, and she just said, what would happen if we saw stagflation? And Powell just pretty much brushed it off and said, our focus right now is getting inflation down. He didn't really answer that. You started to rally off of that, and then I believe it was like 45 to 45.01. The questions kind of overlapped here. Greg Robb asked about a labor shortage question, and Powell just said, we need more workers, and there's a lot of people missing, but he brought that up. It kind of chilled things out a little bit. It was a long question, but he was even talking about like immigration and all of that. And I believe right here, like 43 minutes in when we first started to drop now, there was a question about how long of a recession there would be and if the Fed has thought about it. And Powell pretty much says forecast on inflation going down and slight increase on employment. He said, that's all we're expecting, but we don't really talk about what type of recession. He said, go check the Teal book. They have different models that they run, but they're not really worried about that. And again, they're just worried about inflation coming down and hopefully keeping unemployment not going up too high. And then the last question about 44 minutes in, it was right around here. And then Powell left and we dropped. It was actually a great question. It was about the SEP, but watch out for Jean Young. She brought up the question about, hey, what about restrictive real rates now coming up as inflation comes down? You're already in a high level. That's that chart I showed you at the beginning of the year. And then Powell says, listen, it's a mechanical formula there, and he acknowledges that and says they're aware of it, but he also says that they still would not cut rates until they are confident it comes down in a sustained way. And then Powell leaves, market drops, comes back to the low, bounces up, and then you meet up right at the middle where everything started, and then that is the end of the day. So I got a couple of comments on it. I hope this helps you for tomorrow, based on this gameplay, because I'm telling you, it was already a pretty wild event. I'm going to be looking anything about soft landing odds. I told you this the other day. That is going to be bullish. And remember, I outlined 3 scenarios on the video from Monday. So go back and check that if you're not aware. But he brings up soft landing, any soft landing questions, and he answers that in a dovish tone. That is going to be bullish. If he brings up this whole Goldilocks about, actually wages aren't going up and we actually think unemployment will go up, but not much, and that could bring out some dovishness, I think that'll be very good. But now Anytime the unemployment questions still get brought up, or if he brings up anything about being too strong or wants to double down on that, that will be bearish. And then if he starts to say housing is still lagging, that will be bearish. And then another thing I don't have on here to keep in mind, if he kind of says, hey, you know, the pace isn't as important, but doesn't mean we can't do 50 next meeting, that will be bearish as well. And then, like I'm saying, that housing and core services, that could be an area Powell could hammer home on to not really be happy. And then maybe he answers the financial condition questions a lot more different now that the market is up a lot more. So, Chad, I hope this helps you out. Be there tomorrow. We're holding all of our plays coming into it. I got a couple of ideas, but we got to wait for the info and act on it. So I hope you're ready. And that is your watch list, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure hydrate, healthy, ready to go. Make sure you post your watch list. Make sure we see you there in the morning. I need the armor on. I need the helmet shining. I need you to remember, baby, you're built for this game. Do not get hypnotized by the hand. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. And remember, we got to string together a couple of moves. Don't be too jumpy. Take it in, and I'm telling you, the only thing that'll get the best of you is not going to be Powell. It's not going to be the markets. It's going to be the emotions. But, Chad, you're ready, and we're going to do it live tomorrow. But I love you. I will see you in the morning. Make sure you get some good rest. And peace out. I love you. Horn.